Hello, all my friends out there in TV land. This is Senior Issues, etc. I'm your host, Vita Verdon, and I have a healthy show for you today. I know even though it's cold out there, we're all shivering, this is going to warm your heart and warm your mind because you get yourself a paper and pencil, get your cup of coffee, and this one's for you. I listen to everything you tell me, and I try my best to be obedient. We have a return guest with us today, and I know you've seen her on this show, and you've seen her on Channel 5 NBC News. She has a segment which is called Food for Thought, and she gives all the directions on how to live a healthy life. It's more than just health/nutrition. It's actually a lifestyle. So I want you to sit back, relax, this one's for you, and give a warm welcome to Dr. Sandy Goldberg, which we're so happy to have you back on the show. We had such a good report, and we had good playback on when you were on for your Silver Lining Foundation, which she is the founder of, which she is a cancer survivor like me, and in the Cancer Survivor, she has this foundation for people who don't, for cancer, for breast cancer, who don't have insurance.
Right.
And they can look it up through A Silver Lining Foundation.
.org.
.org. You got it. So I know that you've been through this before, but for people who haven't seen you on the last show that we did, could you just give us, look right into that camera and give us a little inside scoop about yourself? I love the story of how you met your husband. That's so wonderful. If you could throw that in, that blessed my heart this morning.
Well, it's always a joy to be here, number one, and I'm so glad to be back here for seniors, for senior issues, etc. The last time that I was on, as Vita said, the response was wonderful, and several of you did call and ask questions about access to getting testing, perhaps not for yourselves, but your children, your grandchildren, and relatives and friends. That would be at no cost for those who are uninsured and underinsured. But today, I'm here as NBC5's Health and Nutrition contributor. And as Vita said, I have my own segment, Food for Thought, every Saturday and Sunday morning on the 6 a.m. show. Actually, I come on a little later, about 6:35 or so, and you can always look that up on NBC's website. But I'm here today mostly to discuss issues regarding health, regarding nutrition, for all of us, I think, Vita, but a particular focus on those of us who are in our, I don't say golden years, I say platinum years.
Platinum is
right.
That's got a good ring to it.
Right. And of course, even though my husband is going to look at both of us and he's sitting in the back of the studio, before we went on air today, we were discussing how my husband and I connected and got married, and we actually got engaged on the way to our first date.
Well, you know what? You have to tell the story. It's so adorable. I know they're interested, and they like up close and personal.
Well, my husband and I knew each other many, many, many years ago, and we connected on the street. We walked into each other on the street, and he said to me the first thing, "You're still short." I asked him where his mustache was. He called me the next morning and informed me we were going out for dinner, and on the way to dinner, we got engaged. We never made it to our first date. Well, we did subsequent to getting engaged. We walked by a flower store, and I said, "I like those yellow flowers in the window." Coming from the South, I knew only roses. My husband said they're forsythia. I said, "I like the color, it's pretty." And he said, "Good, we'll have them at our wedding." And I, as many people who had had a bad experience in the past, had sort of vowed never to get married again. But when my husband said we're having it at our wedding, something said to me, or something came out of me, and I said, "But I'd like a small wedding." And as I said it, I thought, what have you just said, Sandy? And Greg said, "You know we'll have a big wedding." And I said yes, and we got married.
That's a wonderful story.
It's a great story, and it's 15 years now, and the best blessing I've ever had.
Oh, that is so nice. Well, let's just plunge right into our subject matter. Now, this is more than good health or nutrition. It's a way of life, isn't it?
It most definitely is a way of life. And I think what happens for many of us, especially as time marches on, although I like to say that 70 is the new 50 and 80 is the new 55, is the fact that we need to think about not only what we're eating and certainly getting our checkups, but how are we handling our lives and the relationship of eating properly and taking care of ourselves to our health and certainly to the quality of life that we live. I mean, staying busy as an example, paying attention to our behavior, to our lifestyle habits, certainly.
Yes. Well, I know that you probably get so many people calling in and asking you different questions.
Right.
What is one of the main questions that people ask you?
This is going to be an answer that is a lot longer answer, I think, than Vita, or perhaps some of you might think that I was going to give. I do get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions from people, regardless of their age. And a question may have to do with, as an example, I have a disease. I have heart disease, as an example. I want to make sure that I'm healthy. What can I do? Now, that may sound like a very simple question, but it requires a rather complicated answer. And in most cases, it's not a question that can be answered instantaneously. And why? Because you're calling me to ask a question, but I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your health history, what kind of medications you're taking, what your lifestyle is in terms of anything that you've done up to that point or are doing now. So I may not be able to answer the question. And sometimes people think that I'm actually putting them off when I'm not. But I often have said, if somebody can give you an answer regarding your personal health, particularly if it involves a circumstance that you've been dealing with for a long time, and they go, do this, do this, do this, do this, I would recommend not listening to them.
Because it's just a script, and it's not one script fits all. What they have to have is personal diagnosis.
I think that's a very good point about the personal diagnosis. And I also think there are a few suggestions that perhaps one could make, notice that.
Like what?
Are you taking a vitamin mineral supplement? But again, I would back that up with does your health professional suggest that you do? Are you doing that? You know, are you watching your intake of sodium? Is your weight under control? Are you getting any kind of movement? What is your history? Do you have a family history? Do you live alone? I mean, there are a lot of different questions that a professional should ask of someone who calls. Because nothing, especially in terms of our health, is a one-size-fits-all. And why I often say that we are computers, but we're all programmed just a little bit differently. And that tiny megabyte, or I don't know computer words very well, but you know what I'm getting at, that one tiny bit of information that might be left out or difference in our own genetic programming can make a tremendous difference.
Well, I know one of the things that you mentioned on the last time you were on is how you got started at NBC, that you actually just called in.
Right.
And that was just for a tiny little window.
Right.
And that you went there, and what have you been there, 21 years now?
Yes, in April it's going to be 21 years. And it's very interesting, and there's a story regarding, actually the reason that we're sitting here in terms of the title of your show, is that I think that there's an expectation that as perhaps we're not 20 or 30 or 40 for that matter, is that we should become spectators, or the perception of us should be as spectators. And that's anything but correct. When I was in clinical practice years ago, I still see a few people, but given my schedule with the foundation and NBC, I don't that much anymore. But I thought, I have something to say. I have a message about weight reduction, about health, about nutrition. And I talked to a few people, Vita. And I said, I'd like to go on television. And they said to me, you're too old and too short. And that was 21 years ago. And so I thought to myself, short, I can't do anything about. Old, I can't do anything about. Information I have. So what I did was pick up the phone, did my research. Morning weekend show had just started. found out who the executive producer was, picked up the phone, and I said, you know, I've lost a lot of weight. This is what I do. This is what I've been doing for a number of years. I'd like to come on and talk about that. And 21 years later, I'm still there.
Well, you know, at that time, I think the demographics are the things that programmed whoever was in charge, like to keep within the boundaries of. And the demographics, you know, I didn't know they would have a demographics as far as height is concerned, but I know they had it as far as weight is concerned. But, you know, for me, breaking in and pioneering a senior show, I know that we've created our own demographics, and the demographics have changed. And the attitude of people have changed, and as seniors, we're living a lot longer than ever before due to a lot of factors, technology, the changes in medicine, and so we are pioneering. We don't have a generation before us to show us. So we're going to come back to it, but now we're going into Vita's Pearls of Wisdom. You know, I always have something to tell you to keep you going. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is to greatly and humbly apologize. On the Attitude of Gratitude show, I was so brass in proclaiming that we had gotten 19 and a half feet instead of 19 and a half inches. So I apologize to you for that. It was only 19 and a half inches, and today it is below zero. I'm not mentioning how much because I don't want to get into that bag again. Now, one of the things I wanted to say going along with this health show, and this is, you know, if we all say we want to live to be 100, then we have to have a plan. We can't just, like when ride a motorcycle, hey, look at me, I could do it. We got to have something, those gray cells going up here, that we have to have a plan. And the plan is that we have to have the right nutrition, we have to have movement, and you have to believe in something. And I'll tell you what you need to have in your mind, because I practice this all the time, a vision of what you want to accomplish. Now, the years can knock away that I don't walk as good, you know, and I'm not doing something as good, but you don't lose this and you don't lose your heart.
Right.
So you could have a vision, and if you're a creative person, that is a gift from God from above. And that gift, and it doesn't have to be like something, oh, you have to go this lane, this lane. You just pay attention, and how you know it's a gift is when you love to do it and it comes easy to you. Now, this happened, you're happened to watching my gift. I don't know how it works because I never got nervous in front of the cameras because I considered I wanted to connect with you out there, which I know I have. You know I love you out there. I wanted to connect with you, and I wanted to bring you good information that I was getting, okay? If I can do it, you can do it. So you just meditate on that, and you'll see that will help you. Another thing I'd like to say is a lot of you have called me and have sent me emails in about like certain supplements you're taking. It doesn't matter whether it's a supplement, and I tell you all the time about your vitamins. You have to take your vitamins with something to eat, or the only thing that you're giving nutrition to is your toilet. So be sure to take vitamins with eating something, and any kind of supplement. When you go to your doctor, that's not a separate category. When you go to your primary doctor, you have all your medication and you have every single supplement, because there's some supplements that could give an action and a counteraction to whatever kind of medication you're taking. And don't become your own scientist that you can figure it out. You need a professional to tell you. And you watch the guidelines on this and carry it through, and you're going to see it's not only we want to live longer, we don't want to live longer, oh, here I got another 10 years to go. We want to live longer with vitality. The thing we want to pass on to our next generation is, hey, look, the last generation only lived to this age. Look at me, you know, in spite of everything, I'm alive, I'm creative, I'm going, and I look forward to tomorrow, and I look forward to living forever, because our heart can live forever. We're destined to do that. So now pay attention. We got more information, and we're going to get back to our bright doctor over here who's going to fill us in on some more good things.
I want to actually continue something that you were talking about, and that's vitamin supplementation. And I think this is very, very important. And one of the things that's so important that I see in terms of vitamin supplementation is that people are on one side of the fence or on the other. What I want to caution you about vitamin supplementation and purchasing anything, as we call it OTC, over the counter, is that many people have the perception, if I can go into a Walgreens or go into a CVS or anything and buy something over the counter, I can take as much of it as I want. There's a lot of over-abuse of over-the-counter supplementation or any sorts of substances that you can buy in the store. And with more and more medications being released as over-the-counters, which were not before, please be sure, and I'm echoing what you said, to make sure that the amount of supplement that you are taking, number one, has been vetted by your health professional, that you've certainly sat down with somebody who is familiar and preferably significantly trained in the field of nutrition and dietetics, who has done an analysis of how you eat, not anyone else, how you eat, to see what kind of vitamins, minerals that you may be lacking that you would need to take through a supplement. Something else that we're talking about and that you mentioned in terms of supplementation, another reason to make sure you take your supplement with something, I call it sandwiching. Eat a little bit of something, have your supplement, finish your food. And why are you doing that? Because on an empty stomach, not only can you not get the usage of it by traveling through your system, especially vitamin C, but the fact that you will most of the time experience rather significant GI, stomach pain. And the reason you're getting the pain is because you're not buffering the vitamin mineral supplement on both sides with some sort of nutrients.
Oh, that's such a good word, buffering. Buffering, remember that word. That's going to help you in taking it. That's such a good word.
Well, I'm glad you like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like that. And also a few other suggestions that I might make across the board. Again, echoing what Vita said about making sure talk to your health professional, because some supplements do either enhance to the point that it's not good or minimize, again, to the point that it's not good, some of the medications that you may be taking, is to make sure you know what you're doing. I think, again, a lot of us consider when we get to a certain age that we know what we're doing. Certain fields we do, certain areas of certain fields we do. But when it comes to your body, when it comes to your health, when it comes to your nutrition, our bodies change as we age. They do. Maybe we're not standing up as straight. Maybe we may not have the kind of energy that we do. Maybe our tastes have changed. Food tastes a little bit bland. Maybe it's a little harder to chew. These are all circumstances that you need to take into consideration where your own individual health and nutrition and choices are taken.
Well, I know that food and the way we're taking food, I mean, we could spend hours and hours and hours just discussing that. That's a big part of our health plan. But I know there's other things that go into it, like, you know, how we're sleeping. Right. And our philosophy of life.
That does.
Whether we're living alone or whether we're living
right.
with a family, how much exercise we're getting. But I think there's another subject I'd like to talk about. It hooks in with a way of health, is stress. I think, and so there has to be ways that can relieve stress in our life.
That is a very complicated question again.
Right.
And it is actually a universal circumstance regardless of one's age. What's very important in terms of stress, and I'm going to tie that in as well because you mentioned the sleep topic as well, is that what you want to do is to make sure that you are watching and, especially if you're under stress, limiting the amount of caffeine you're taking in. And the reason that I'm telling you that is that you think maybe you'll have a cup or two of coffee and 4 or 5 hours later everything will be okay. No. In some cases, it can take anywhere from 12 to 36 hours to mitigate, to reduce the amount of caffeine you've taken in by half. So in other words, there still may be residue of the caffeine, which maybe we're
12
using,
hours.
it can be as much as 12 to 36, again, depending on the individual.
You know, this answers a question for me, because I take coffee in the morning, period. Sometimes in the afternoon I think, oh, should I take it? Well, I never really knew how many hours, so that does answer a question for me. But talking about the taking in coffee, I'd like to talk about, how about hydrating yourself?
Hydration, again, is a very specific topic. And you see, what you're doing, and I'm so glad you're asking these questions, is you're validating exactly what I said right in the beginning of the show, is that we're all programmed differently. Adequate hydration is, of course, essential. But what is adequate hydration to one person as opposed to another person can be significantly different. In some cases, your health professional may say, make sure you drink a lot of water. The medication you're taking, you need it. On the other hand, you may be suffering from certain health conditions, and adding additional hydration may actually be a negative instead of a positive. Same thing in terms of sodium. In terms, you know, we're talking now about 1,500 milligrams as being really the ideal amount of sodium to take in. Most Americans take in a minimum of 3,300 milligrams. Then there are people that have kidney disease, heart disease, that 1,500 milligrams may be too much for them. Something that Vita said to you that I concur with wholeheartedly: if you don't read labels, start reading them. That is very, very important. It will give you at least a good baseline to go with in terms of some of the choices that we make. Also, I mean, I remember growing up, my mother used to make soup from scratch. We really didn't eat a lot of chips. We didn't eat a lot of the food that we have now. The prepared food is very, very high in sodium in the main, unless it says, and you should look at this, sodium free, which is as much as it can be, or no salt added. So you want to look at labels. If these cover health circumstances that you have, these are the labels that you should look at. And also remember, before the show we were talking about gluten-free.
Right.
Yeah, and what that means, you may discover, and some people discover that sensitivity becomes enhanced as we get older, and in some cases wheat and wheat products. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
Well, I'd like to bring up another subject, is sugar. Now I know, like on a label, because I do read labels, it might not say sugar, but it could say a lot of other things.
Right.
Like it could say corn syrup, you know, fructose, and you have to really do a research if
Right.
you intend to go like on a sugar-free. What you have to research is all the definitions and the
Right.
names
And
the words of what sugar is called, right?
And I want you to know that I'm going to be answering on this weekend, probably on Saturday, exactly that topic where sugar is concerned, because one of my viewers called up and said, I'm thinking about going on a sugar-free diet. Number one, there is no such thing as a sugar-free diet.
Because sugar's in
You
everything.
can reduce, exactly, you can reduce the amount of sugar. There are 42 separate names for sugar that can be utilized on a label. The easiest way to start to educate yourself, look at the last 3 letters in the ingredients.
Is it
where says
toast?
O-S-E.
Toast.
If it's O-S-E
O-S-E.
on the end, no matter what it says, to the left of that, if on the end it's O-S-E, it's sugar.
That's an easy way. Did you hear what Dr. Sandy said? That is an easy way. O-S-E. If it's that on the end,
Sugar.
that's sugar.
Automatically. And you know, there are fancy names for everything. And
Now, there is sugar in fruit.
there's sugar pretty much in everything. There's certainly sugar in fruit. There's sugar in vegetables. You know, there's sugar in carbohydrates. So
There's sugar in bread then.
yeah, there's sugar in bread. Certainly, I mean, when we think about sugar, we think about the white stuff.
Right.
That's what we think about. But there's inherent sugar in almost everything. So the question is, again, how much sugar should you as an individual be taking in? And a very important thing to where I would recommend watching, again, if weight is an issue, health is an issue, is processed sugars, added sugars. As an example, I was talking about a can of soda. If you substitute 12 ounces of water, seltzer water, for 12 ounces of soda, in that one can of soda, there is 9.75 teaspoons of sugar
Really?
in regular soda. So if you substitute, and the RDA for women is 6 teaspoons. So we're already 50% over by having one can. I mean, this is, to me, this is absolutely fascinating stuff. And this is a sort
So
of thing.
that's just a substitution in that.
And you're saving
taking that
9.75.
throughout the year.
Right.
That's a biggie.
And when you think about it on a day, in a day, that the RDA is 6 teaspoons. And here's this one can. How many people drink regular soda? How many people have a couple of cans of soda a day? One can is 50% over. And what about if you're eating other foods? Say you grab a cookie. Say you're having a couple of pieces of fruit. Say you're having whatever else it is you're having. You're just adding and adding and adding. So I think awareness of what we're doing is very important.
Well, I think like if a person is stuck and they see the overhaul, they see a mountain. So I know how I start things, and what I entice myself to start, I start with a baby step.
Right, absolutely.
See, so maybe we can give out some baby steps that people could start at. Like a baby step, a good start would be reading labels.
Reading labels is certainly one.
Right.
But I think what's important in terms of baby steps is that we take one step at a time, not take baby step 1, 2, 5, and 10. Reading labels is a great way to go. If sugar, if you're concerned about your weight, take a look at what is in the food you're eating. Most of us are eating processed foods. You might want to take a look at that. Something else, a tip that I learned a long time ago, leave 2 bites of everything on your plate.
Oh, that's a good
2
one.
bites.
2 bites.
And what that 2 bites across the board translates into is 75 calories.
That is so good for me. I have an Italian Sicilian background, and what was drummed into us as children is, the children in China, they don't eat.
Right.
You have to clean your plate.
Right.
God bless my parents, but that day is over.
Right.
Not that they were wrong, that's where they were then, but we're in a new hour. Leave 2 bites on your plate. I'm saying this to myself.
It's interesting because you were talking about the children in China.
Yeah.
My mother used to say, the children in Sicily are eating rocks and you won't eat your mashed peas.
That's so funny.
To this day, I have trouble eating peas. But people will say to me, okay, fine, so I leave my 2 spoons of vegetables, or I leave it's wasteful. What we used to do at home, my mother had a freezer container, and anything that was left over, meat or vegetables, she would put in the freezer container, and when it was full, she would make soup. So that's another way of handling that. So you're controlling what you're eating, and you're preparing for a future meal anyway. And it's easy. Another thing that I think is very, very important is just throw away the salt shaker. Don't have it in your house. If you don't have it in your house, you can't use it.
How about pepper?
Pepper for most people is fine. Again, ask your health professional if that's all right for you. In some cases, people who have GI issues, stomach issues as an example, that's contraindicated. It wouldn't be something that would be recommended that they would have. So again, we come back to the computer being programmed just a tiny bit differently.
Well, that we could go on and on. We're going to have Dr. Sandy back to fill us in because she gives us a lift and she gives us a poke, and so we're going to have her back periodically. When you out there come to the end of your rope, you tie a knot and hang on. You know why? Because the best is yet to come. What we want you all to do this week is to catch the spirit. God bless you. We love you.